When the alien fleet appeared in Earth's orbit, the world stood still. Their ships, vast and ominous, cast shadows over continents, blocking out the sun in some regions. The invaders, a species known as the Cavari, had conquered countless planets, their empire stretching across the stars. They didn't come to negotiate, they came to demand surrender. Their message was broadcast in every language across every screen. Your planet now belongs to the Cavari Dominion. Resist, and you will be eradicated. Submit, and you will be assimilated into our rule. You have 24 hours to comply. Panic spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to respond. The United Nations held emergency meetings, but fear threatened to paralyze them. The Cavari had technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Their ships bristled with weapons capable of turning cities into craters. Against them, humanity seemed hopelessly outmatched. But then, something changed. In the heart of Washington, D.C., in a secured underground bunker, General Alan Mercer sat in silence, watching the alien message replay. He was an old soldier, one who had fought wars, seen destruction, and understood something the Cavari clearly didn't. Humans never surrendered. He turned to his team, his face carved from stone. "Get me a line to every leader on this planet, now." Within hours, Earth's greatest minds gathered. Not just politicians and generals, but scientists, hackers, and strategists. They worked together in a way humanity rarely did, driven by the knowledge that survival was at stake. The Cavari assumed Earth was weak. They assumed humanity would bow like so many others had before them. They were wrong. General Mercer stepped in front of the cameras, broadcasting back to the Cavari fleet. His voice was steady, his eyes cold. "You came to our planet thinking we would kneel. You assumed we would break. But you don't understand what it means to be human. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We do not have the most advanced technology. But we have something no empire, no conqueror has ever been able to extinguish: our will to fight." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a growl. "You want to take Earth? Then come down and try. But understand this: humanity does not fight fair. We are survivors. We are innovators. We will turn your own weapons against you. We will use every dirty trick, every deception, every ounce of ingenuity to make you bleed. You may have conquered other worlds, but you have never faced anything like us. Leave now, while you still can. Because if you don't, we won't just defeat you. We will make sure the universe remembers what happens to those who threaten our home." The message was sent. The world held its breath. And the Cavari hesitated. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the world, people sat in their homes, in bunkers, in hastily fortified military bases, waiting for a response. The Cavari fleet hovered in orbit, their massive warships like silent gods staring down at an ant colony. For the first time, they didn't immediately strike. They were calculating, analyzing. This reaction from humanity was unexpected. In the Cavari command vessel, Supreme Warlord Vashtal considered his options. He had crushed 100 worlds under his rule, each falling in line without much resistance. But this species, these humans, were different. They did not cower. They did not beg. They did not even seem afraid. Instead, they had issued a warning, a challenge. His advisors urged immediate destruction. "They are primitives," one of them hissed, a reptilian curl of disdain in his voice. "Wipe them out and be done with it." But Vashtal hesitated. Not out of fear. No, never fear. It was something else, a curiosity perhaps, a nagging thought. Other species had submitted because they recognized the inevitable. But these humans spoke with such certainty, such defiance, that it made him pause. Could they truly be so confident? Vashtal's eyes narrowed. He issued a command. "Deploy a single assault squad to the surface. We will test their words. On Earth, as the sun set over Washington, D.C., General Mercer and his team monitored the fleet closely. Every satellite, every hacked alien frequency, every makeshift radar system they had been able to adapt was trained on the invaders. Then, the warning came. "Sir," a young officer called out, her voice sharp with urgency. "We've got movement. A dropship just broke from their formation." On screens across the command center, the alien vessel descended, a sleek black dagger cutting through the sky. Its engines roared like thunder as it landed just outside of a major city, London. The world watched as its doors hissed open, and a squad of Cavari warriors stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time. They stood at nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies clad in armor that shimmered unnaturally. Their weapons, unlike anything seen before, pulsed with a sickly green glow. They carried themselves with arrogance, their leader stepping forward and speaking in perfect English through a translator device. "Earth," he announced, his voice booming. "You have been given a chance to surrender. Your defiance is foolish. We will demonstrate why." Then he raised his arm and fired. A pulse of energy surged outward, obliterating a row of buildings in an instant. A warning shot, a display of power. But Earth was ready. Even before the dust settled, the response came. Snipers hidden in the ruins of a collapsed tower opened fire. Bullets infused with alien metals, reverse-engineered from previous encounters with extraterrestrial technology, pierced the Cavari's armor. The leader staggered, a look of disbelief on his face as dark purple blood seeped from the wound. Then came the real attack. From underground tunnels, human soldiers emerged, armed with railguns and experimental energy weapons scavenged from crashed alien crafts over the decades. From rooftops, drone swarms descended, each one a guided missile loaded with nanite explosives. Civilians, normal people who had never held a weapon before yesterday, threw Molotov cocktails, set traps, and struck from the shadows. The Cavari warriors, trained for direct battle, found themselves in a nightmare of guerrilla warfare. They had expected a fight, but not like this. Not with this level of savagery, this level of coordination. Within minutes, half of their squad lay dead. The remaining few tried to retreat to their ship. They never made it. As the last Cavari fell, cameras broadcasted the battle to the entire world. The message was clear. Earth was not to be underestimated. In orbit, watching from his command throne, Warlord Vashtal clenched his fists. This was no ordinary species. This was a war. The moment the last Cavari warrior fell, Earth erupted. Cheers rang out from underground bunkers, military bases, and homes where families had watched in terror. The impossible had happened. Humanity had drawn first blood. But inside the war room, General Mercer wasn't celebrating. His gaze remained locked on the satellite feeds showing the Cavari fleet above. The battle in London had been a test, and now Vashtal had his answer. The question wasn't if they would retaliate. It was when. "We don't have time to enjoy this," Mercer said grimly, turning to his team. "That was their scouting force. Now they'll come in full strength." Dr. Evelyn Park, one of the lead scientists working on Earth's desperate technological adaptations, nodded. "We bought ourselves a few hours, maybe a day at most. We need to be ready for whatever they send next." Mercer exhaled slowly. "Then we hit them first." The room fell silent. Major Leon Ortiz, a hardened special operations leader, frowned. "Sir, you're suggesting we attack their fleet?" Mercer nodded. "We don't wait for them to bring the fight to us. We take it to them. If we sit here, we lose. But if we hit them where they don't expect it..." He looked around the room, his eyes sharp with determination. "We just might change the rules of this war." Above Earth, in the Cavari command vessel, Vashtal sat in his throne-like chair, his mind racing. Reports from the failed ground assault played on the holo displays around him. He watched his elite warriors be cut down by creatures who shouldn't have stood a chance. This wasn't just resistance. This was something else. His second-in-command, Commander Rethzul, growled in frustration. They fight like beasts, no honor, no discipline, just chaos and trickery. Vashtal's jaw tightened. That chaos killed our warriors in minutes. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt the unfamiliar stirrings of unease. There was something dangerous about these humans. Something unpredictable. "No more tests," he declared. "We will burn their cities to the ground." He stood, towering over the other Cavari in the room. "Prepare the orbital cannons. We'll make an example of one of their capitals. Let them watch their world turn to ash." Rethzul nodded sharply. "Which city shall we destroy?" Vashtal opened his mouth to speak. Then the alarms blared. A Cavari technician scrambled to his console. "Supreme Warlord, we have incoming projectiles from the planet." "What?" Vashtal snapped, striding forward. He stared at the data streaming in, and for the first time, he saw something that sent a jolt of shock through him. Humans had just launched an attack on his fleet. On Earth, hidden deep in the Arctic, a secret military base hummed with life. It was known only by a code name: Project Ragnarok. For years, scientists and engineers had worked in secrecy, studying whatever alien technology had crashed onto the planet over the decades. They had built weapons, defenses, things that shouldn't have been possible for a civilization as primitive as Earth. And now, for the first time, they were being used. Massive railguns, hidden beneath icy mountains, roared to life. Hypersonic missiles, cloaked with stealth tech, streaked through the atmosphere. Experimental drone fighters designed using scavenged alien schematics shot toward orbit. Humanity wasn't just resisting, they were fighting back. The first railgun slug tore through the shields of a Cavari battleship like paper. A second later, the ship exploded in a fiery blast. Hypersonic missiles struck the fleet, detonating with a force they hadn't anticipated. The Cavari, who had expected an easy conquest, now found themselves under siege. On the command vessel, Vashtal gripped the armrests of his throne as his fleet shook under the assault. Impossible. This was impossible. No species had ever dared attack a Cavari fleet in orbit. No world had ever launched such an offensive. And yet, here was Earth, throwing everything it had at them. This was no weak, defenseless species. This was something else, something dangerous, something he might have underestimated. The command center aboard Vashtal's flagship was chaos. Cavari officers shouted over one another, scrambling to make sense of what was happening. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this. No pre-spacefaring civilization had ever launched an orbital assault against the Dominion. Yet here they were, firing advanced weapons, scoring kills. Another battleship erupted in flames, torn apart by railgun slugs. Vashtal clenched his fists, watching as his once dominant fleet now found itself under siege. "This is unacceptable," his second-in-command, Rethzul, roared. "Deploy all fighters! Wipe them out!" Vashtal's eyes narrowed. Something wasn't right. "These weapons," he muttered, studying the battlefield. "Where did they get them?" Rethzul barely paid attention. "It does not matter. We have the advantage in numbers and firepower. We crush them now, before—" Before he could finish, another Cavari officer turned, his reptilian features twisted in shock. "Supreme Warlord, we have a breach in our communications network. The humans—" Static filled the holoscreens. Then a voice cut through. A human voice. "This is Captain Jackson Holt of the UNSF Valkyrie. We have boarded your ship." For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence. Then came the alarms. Far above Earth, A single Cavari battleship drifted, its crew already dead or dying. Inside, human soldiers moved like ghosts, weapons in hand, their armor modified from scavenged alien tech. They had boarded using stealth shuttles, bypassing defenses that should have been impenetrable. Now they moved through the corridors of the alien warship with lethal efficiency. Captain Jackson Holt led the charge. His team had trained for months under the assumption that one day Earth would face an alien threat. They had studied every piece of recovered technology, prepared themselves for this very moment. The Cavari thought they were invincible. Jackson was here to prove them wrong. He motioned for his squad to advance. "Find their command center. Take control of their systems. If we can hack into their fleet, we can turn their own weapons against them." A Cavari warrior rounded the corner, raising a plasma rifle. Jackson fired first. The alien crumpled, lifeless. The humans moved forward. Earth wasn't just fighting. They were taking the war to the enemy. Back on Vashtal's command ship, a Cavari officer paled as new data flashed across the screen. "Supreme Warlord, another ship has gone dark. The humans have taken it." Vashtal's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. His fleet, the might of the Dominion, was being hacked, infiltrated, and dismantled from within. No world had ever fought back like this. No species had ever dared. This was no ordinary resistance. This was something new, something that sent a rare, foreign sensation creeping into Vashtal's chest. Something he had never felt before. Fear. Vashtal's breath came slow and heavy as the realization sank in. Humanity was not just resisting. They were learning, adapting, and now they were winning. His fleet, once a symbol of unrivaled dominance, was crumbling. Another ship flickered on his tactical display, then went dark. The humans had boarded it. "Supreme Warlord," Rethzul rasped, his voice tight with disbelief. "We must retreat. Regroup." Vashtal's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. Retreat? The idea was unthinkable. The Cavari Dominion had never retreated from a war. But this wasn't a war. This was a message, and humanity was carving that message into the very bones of the Dominion. A new alert flashed on the command console. Vashtal's eyes narrowed as the holodisplay shifted, revealing a single human ship, a crude, ugly thing by Dominion standards, moving fast, burning hard toward his flagship. A suicide run? He bared his fangs. Foolish. He would swat them down. Then, the comms came alive. A voice, human, calm and controlled, rang through his ship. "Vashtal," the voice said, using his name without honorifics. "An insult. This is General Mercer of Earth. You came here expecting easy prey. You expected submission. Instead, you found something else." The human ship continued its approach. "You found a species that fights. A species that does not kneel. A species that will never forget what you've done today." A cold chill ran down Vashtal's spine. "Leave now, while you still can, because the next time you return..." The human ship suddenly veered off course at the last second. Not a suicide run, but a distraction. At that same moment, another of Vashtal's warships exploded, hacked and overridden from within. And then Mercer finished his warning. "You won't be facing a species defending its home. You'll be facing a species that learned how to hunt." The transmission cut off. For the first time in his long, blood-soaked reign, Supreme Warlord Vashtal hesitated, and then, with the weight of the moment crushing down upon him, he uttered a word that had never been spoken by a Cavari in war. "Withdraw." The Cavari fleet disengaged. Engines flared. Gravity drives spun to life. One by one, they vanished into the void. Earth had won, not just the battle, not just the war. They had announced themselves to the galaxy. And somewhere, in the far reaches of space, The Cavari Dominion would whisper among themselves in hushed, uneasy tones. Humanity was not to be trifled with, because the next time an alien fleet darkened Earth's skies, the hunters would be waiting. The war was over, but Earth was forever changed. Victory came at a cost. Cities still smoldered from the Cavari assault. Millions were dead. Entire governments had collapsed under the weight of the invasion. But in the rubble, something new was born, something that had never existed before. A united Earth. The night the Cavari fled, celebrations erupted across the world. People flooded the streets, chanting in every language. It didn't matter where they were from. They were human, and they had survived. But in the shadows, behind the fireworks and the tears of joy, the leaders of Earth knew the truth. Survival wasn't enough. General Mercer stood in the newly formed Earth Strategic Command Bunker, deep beneath the Arctic ice, surrounded by the best minds left on the planet. Scientists, military leaders, engineers, every survivor who had proved themselves invaluable during the war. The room was tense. The victory felt hollow, because every person here knew what came next. "We have a choice," Mercer said, standing at the head of the room. "We can rebuild, pretend this was just an anomaly, go back to our old ways." His jaw clenched. "Or we prepare, because I promise you this, the Cavari will return, and they won't come alone." The room was silent. No one disagreed. Dr. Evelyn Park adjusted her glasses, scrolling through data on her holoscreen. "We've salvaged nearly a dozen Cavari vessels. The tech alone has pushed our understanding of physics forward by centuries. We've also intercepted their communications before they left. They've labeled us as a threat." She glanced up. "That means the Dominion will be watching. They won't allow us to grow unchecked." "Then we don't wait," Captain Jackson Holt said, his voice firm. He had been on the front lines, had watched his soldiers die holding the last defensive lines in the war. "If we wait, we die. We do what they don't expect." Mercer nodded. "We take the fight to them." A murmur spread through the room. It was madness. Humanity had barely survived. They had only won because of sheer unpredictability and luck. But if the Cavari came back with their full armada, Earth wouldn't stand a chance, unless Earth was no longer just Earth. "What are you suggesting?" Dr. Park asked carefully. "We expand," Mercer said simply. "We take their technology, we study their tactics, and we don't just rebuild Earth." His eyes burned with the fire of a man who had seen too much death, too much loss. "We build an empire of our own." The idea hit the room like a shockwave. Humanity, an empire. For centuries they had fought each other over borders, resources, ideologies. Now they had one enemy, one threat to focus on. And suddenly the idea of nations seemed small. Humanity would not just defend, they would conquer. Dr. Park exhaled. "I assume you have a plan?" Mercer nodded. He tapped the holotable, bringing up a map of the solar system. "Step 1. We fortify Earth. Every surviving nation contributes to a global military force. Every scientific institution works toward reverse engineering the Cavari technology. No more secrecy. No more division." No one argued. "Step 2. We expand beyond Earth. The Cavari thought we were trapped on this planet, easy to crush." He leaned forward. "That ends now. We terraform Mars, establish outposts on Europa and Titan. We build shipyards on the Moon. Earth is no longer our only home." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The Cavari had assumed humanity was contained, that they could destroy them in a single strike. That assumption had been wrong. "Step 3. Mercer's voice lowered. "We build a fleet." The room tensed. Jackson Holt folded his arms. "Not just a fleet for defense." Mercer met his gaze. "Number A, fleet for war." Silence. Then Evelyn Park spoke. "You're talking about an offensive force." Mercer exhaled. "The Cavari won't forget what happened here, but they'll convince themselves it was luck, a fluke. They'll assume we won't grow fast enough to be a real threat." His fists clenched. "We prove them wrong." His voice was calm, but the weight of it sent a shiver through the room. "The next time an alien fleet enters our system, we don't just fight them off." He looked around the table, meeting every eye. "We chase them down, we take their worlds, and we never let them threaten us again." There was no applause, no cheers, only determination. Humanity had been hunted. Now they were the hunters, and the galaxy would soon learn what it meant to fear them. The transformation of Earth was swift and relentless. In the aftermath of war, desperation fueled progress, and humanity did what it did best: adapted. Factories that once built cars now assembled warships. Universities that once taught economics now specialized in quantum mechanics and alien propulsion systems. Every surviving government funneled resources into the same goal, ensuring humanity would never be prey again. The United Nations was dissolved, replaced by a single ruling body, the Terran Dominion. It wasn't a government, it was a war machine. A council of generals, scientists, and strategists led the effort, answerable only to one doctrine: expanse, control, domination. No more wars between humans, no more divisions. The old world was dead. The new world belonged to the species willing to claim it. Humanity was no longer content to survive. They would conquer. 3 years after the war, the first Terran war fleet was launched from the moon's newly built shipyards. The vessels were brutal and efficient, hybrids of human engineering and reverse-engineered Cavari technology. Sleek hulls, reinforced titanium plating, magnetized railguns, plasma-based energy weapons, and AI-assisted targeting. They were not built for exploration. They were built for revenge. Mercer stood aboard the bridge of the Retribution, the first human warship capable of interstellar travel. Through the massive viewport, he saw Earth below, scarred yet stronger than ever. This was the moment history would remember, humanity's first step beyond its cradle. Jackson Holt, now Admiral of the fleet, stood beside him, arms folded. His uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Dominion's elite command. "We're ready," Holt said. Mercer nodded. "Then let's remind the Cavari why they should have wiped us out when they had the chance." With a simple command, the Terran war fleet activated their gravity drives and vanished into the void. Humanity had come to the stars, and they were hunting. The Cavari Dominion, still recovering from the shock of their defeat at Earth, had underestimated how quickly humans could adapt. They believed it would take centuries for Earth to become a real threat. It took 3 years. The first human attack came without warning. A Cavari outpost near the edge of their territory, small, insignificant by Dominion standards. It was supposed to be safe. Then the humans arrived. They descended like a storm. The outpost's defense systems barely had time to activate before the Retribution and its fleet shattered them. Railguns fired molten slugs the size of cars, ripping through Cavari battleships. Plasma cannons incinerated defenses. The Cavari barely had time to send out a distress signal before the fleet landed on the surface. The Terran Dominion soldiers were unlike anything the Cavari had faced before. Faster, deadlier, relentless. Equipped with armor forged from reverse-engineered alien tech, carrying weapons designed to kill Cavari warriors with brutal efficiency, they swept through the outpost like a plague. They didn't just kill, they captured. 2 days later, the entire Cavari Dominion received a transmission. The image flickered to life on every Cavari world, station, and ship. A human stood in the center of the screen. General Mercer. Behind him, bound in restraints, were Cavari prisoners, officers, soldiers, civilians, some wounded, all terrified. Mercer's voice was calm, controlled. "This is General Mercer of the Terran Dominion. You came to our world, thinking we were weak. You burned our cities. You slaughtered our people. You tried to break us." His expression darkened. "You failed." He turned, motioning to one of the Cavari prisoners, a high-ranking officer, a Dominion commander. "This is your warning," Mercer said. "For every human life lost in your invasion, we will take 10 of yours. For every city you burned, we will reduce a Cavari world to ash. You gave us no mercy. Expect none in return." The camera zoomed in on the Cavari officer. He was shaking. "You told us we would be hunted." Mercer leaned in close. "You were right." The transmission ended. The Cavari's response panic spread through the Dominion. The Cavari Council convened in emergency meetings. The humans had done the impossible. They had survived. They had thrived. And now they were striking back. Vashadal, the supreme warlord, watched the broadcast in silence. His claws dug into his throne. He had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. He should have exterminated humanity when he had the chance. Now, it was too late. The humans had evolved, and they were coming. The Cavari's reckoning panic rippled through the Cavari Dominion. For centuries, they had been the hunters, the ones who dictated the fate of lesser civilizations. But now, for the first time, they were afraid, because humanity had returned, and they had come for war. Vashtal sat on his war throne, claws digging into the armrests. His advisors whispered among themselves in the vast, towering war chamber of the Dominion's capital world, Cavaros Prime. Their voices were filled with unease, a stark contrast to the arrogance they had displayed mere years ago when they first set their sights on Earth. The humans had changed. They had learned. They had grown. And now they were systematically dismantling the Dominion's outer defenses. Vashtal's command room flickered to life as a live report came in from the Jorvak sector, where one of the Dominion's mid-sized war fleets had engaged human forces. The battle should have been an easy victory. It wasn't. The holographic display showed twisted wrecks of Cavari warships, their once imposing hulls reduced to debris. The Terran fleet had emerged almost unscathed, their brutal tactics overwhelming the Dominion forces before they even had a chance to react. "They are relentless," one of Vashtal's generals admitted, his voice tinged with fear. "Their ships move in ways that defy our predictions. Their weapons are—" Vashtal slammed his fist onto the armrest, silencing the room. His yellow eyes burned with fury. "Their weapons are our weapons," he snarled. "Stolen from us, improved upon. These creatures are nothing but vermin who scavenge from their betters." Silence. No one dared contradict him. But the truth lingered in the air, like poison. Humanity had surpassed them. The old tactics no longer worked. The Cavari had always relied on their technological superiority, their overwhelming force. But humans didn't fight like the others. They were unpredictable. They adapted too fast. And, worst of all, they fought like creatures who had nothing to lose. Earth's next move. Back in Terran space, General Mercer watched the war unfold from the Retribution's command deck. Hollow projections of star systems flickered before him, each marked with the aftermath of recent battles. One thing was clear. The Cavari were reeling. The once mighty Dominion was crumbling at the edges. Their supply lines were being cut. Their forward bases were being turned into human strongholds. The Cavari were retreating deeper into their territory, desperate to regroup. And humanity was right on their heels. Mercer turned to his advisors. "We're done taking their scraps," he said. "The outer systems were just the beginning. We take the next step." Jackson Holt, standing at his side, gave a slow nod. He understood what Mercer was proposing. This was no longer about defense. This was about conquest. They weren't just fighting to protect Earth anymore. They were fighting to erase the Cavari threat forever. Operation Scorched Sky. The plan was brutal. Human forces would launch a three-pronged assault into the heart of the Dominion. They would bypass Cavari strongholds, punch straight through their core systems, and lay siege to Kavaros Prime itself. No hesitation. No mercy. The Cavari had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. Now Earth was coming to them. The fall of Jorvak Prime. The first major strike came against Jorvak Prime, the industrial heart of the Dominion. If Earth could cripple its production lines, the Cavari war machine would grind to a halt. Humanity didn't just attack. They descended like gods of vengeance. Terran warships tore through orbital defenses, blasting through Cavari fleets with ruthless precision. Planetary bombardments targeted military installations, reducing once impenetrable strongholds to molten slag. And then the ground forces arrived. Heavily armored Terran Dominion shock troopers, clad in reinforced exosuits, stormed the Cavari cities. Their weapons cut down enemy soldiers with terrifying efficiency. For the first time in history, Cavari civilians fled before an enemy. Humanity had no interest in peace talks, no interest in surrender, only retribution. The last transmission from Jorvak Prime. As Jorvak burned, a final transmission was sent from its surface, a desperate plea from the Dominion High Commander of the sector, broadcast across Cavari space. This is Commander Vectal. The humans. They are not what we thought. They do not fight for survival. They fight for destruction. We cannot stop them. The signal was cut off. The Cavari Dominion had never known fear. Now, it was all they knew. The final war begins. Vashtal sat in the war chamber of Kavaros Prime, watching as the transmission ended. His claws trembled, not with rage, with dread. The humans were coming. And for the first time in Dominion history, the Cavari had no idea how to stop them. The siege of Kavaros Prime. The Cavari Dominion had stood unchallenged for thousands of years. Their fleets had crushed empires. Their warriors had slaughtered entire species into extinction. No race had ever dared to bring war to Kavaros Prime, the heart of the Dominion. Until now. For weeks, the Terran Dominion's war fleet had carved a path through Cavari space, leaving devastation in its wake. Colony worlds were razed, military installations obliterated, and entire fleets shattered in battles that lasted mere hours. The Cavari had fought back, throwing everything they had into stopping the human advance. It wasn't enough. And now, they were out of time. The first Terran warships broke out of warp just beyond Kavaros Prime's defense perimeter. Hundreds of them. Their dark, jagged hulls gleamed under the light of the planet's twin suns. Then came the dreadnoughts, monstrous ships the size of cities, their hulls bristling with railguns, plasma turrets, and kinetic cannons designed to tear through even the strongest shields. At the center of the fleet, standing like a monument of vengeance, was the Retribution. On the bridge, General Mercer watched the Cavari homeworld loom before them. The planet's surface glittered with the lights of its massive cities, the crown jewel of the Dominion, and soon, its graveyard. "Status?" Mercer asked, his voice calm. Jackson Holt, standing beside him, scanned the incoming reports. "Defenses are at full power. They have 3 orbital fleets, planetary ion cannons, and shield barriers over the capital." Mercer smirked. "Good. We'd hate for this to be too easy." He turned toward the fleet-wide comms. "This is General Mercer to all Terran forces. The Cavari once believed they could burn our world and walk away. They thought we would kneel. They thought we would fear them." His voice darkened. They were wrong. He gestured toward the enemy planet. Today we end this war. No mercy, no retreat, no survivors. Burn their cities, crush their armies, wipe the Dominion from history. A pause. For Earth. The response came in a thunderous chorus across every ship. For Earth. Then the fleet fired. The last stand of the Cavari. The battle began in fire. Terran dreadnoughts unleashed hell. Railgun slugs the size of buildings ripped through Cavari warships, tearing through their shields like paper. Plasma torpedoes slammed into defense stations, reducing them to burning wreckage. The Cavari fought back with desperation. Their fleets swarmed the human warships, their ion cannons and energy lances carving through space. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield as ship after ship was annihilated. But for every human vessel destroyed, 10 Cavari ships fell. They couldn't match human adaptability, couldn't match the ferocity of a species that had learned to survive against impossible odds. The battle raged for hours. Then the planetary bombardment began. Terran warships descended into the lower atmosphere, unleashing hell upon Cavaros Prime. Entire cities vanished in pillars of fire. Military bases were reduced to molten slag. The Cavari's golden capital, Varak-Tul, became a sea of smoke and ash. The fall of the warlord. Deep in the burning ruins of the Cavari capital, Vashtal stood in his throne room, staring at the devastation beyond his shattered windows. The once mighty warlord, the conqueror of worlds, the ruler of the Dominion, trembled. His guards lay dead around him. His advisors had fled. His empire was gone. And then the doors crashed open. Mercer entered first, stepping over the wreckage, his armored boots echoing against the stone floor. His titanium-plated exosuit gleamed with battle scars, and his rifle was still smoking from the last kill. Behind him, Terran soldiers poured in, their weapons aimed at the last Cavari leader. Vashtal bared his fangs. "You are nothing but animals." Mercer stepped closer. "No," he raised his pistol. "We are human." The gunshot echoed through the chamber. Vashtal, the supreme warlord of the Cavari Dominion, fell. The end of the Cavari. Across Cavari space, the news spread like wildfire. Their warlord was dead, their fleets destroyed, their homeworld in ruins, and Earth's final message rang loud and clear. "You threatened our world. Now your kind ceases to exist." The surviving Cavari, those who had fled, those who surrendered, were given one option: exile. The Terran Dominion did not offer peace, did not offer negotiations. The Cavari had tried to wipe out humanity, and now humanity had returned the favor. The dawn of a new empire. Mercer stood aboard the Retribution, gazing down at the burning world beneath him. Earth had won. The Cavari were gone. The Dominion was no more. And now? Now, humanity ruled the stars.